which took place last night. Obviously, our foremost thing is we have this building which has experienced significant structural damage. Our investigation will be slow and methodical, not only to ensure that we obtain every piece of information and try to identify the circumstances that led to this event, but also to ensure the safety of our personnel as well as the personnel from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Because at this point, we don't want to risk the personnel, our personnel, by doing something in haste that could result in injury to one of our people. We anticipate that this investigation will commence full scale tomorrow when all forces are mustered on scene. This investigation, we anticipate at minimum, we're looking at probably a 5-day window at minimum for us to complete our examination of the scene to attempt to determine the exact sequence and the circumstances which took place here tonight, or last night. Thank you.
We'd now like to introduce Sheriff David Morgan, Sheriff of Escambia County. Sheriff?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are basically in a support mode in this operation, meaning that, again, I do not run the Escambia County Correctional Facility, but we are also going to be mirroring the investigation on the 2 inmate deaths because, again, this is, excuse the sunglasses, this is deemed as a, in custody death, and so therefore occurring within my jurisdiction within the county. We will be mirroring this operation along with the ATF and the Fire Marshal's office. And that's basically what we will do throughout this operation until such time that it's deemed that it should transfer to another cognizant authority. So with that, we'll answer any questions, I guess, that they have, Bill?
Yes. Anybody with any questions for any of our folks here?
Was there actually any
What was the question?
Any escapees?
The 3 who were missing. Where did you find the 3 who were unaccounted for?
Okay, Mr.
You
Pike?
want to go there? Yeah.
All inmates have been accounted for. Where were the 3 that were discussed this morning that were unaccounted for? We did not bring that up. I don't know where that came from. We didn't make any statements until we had a complete count on all inmates, and all of them have been accounted for.
What about the inmates injured? Everybody out of the hospital? How many still in the hospital?
Yeah, I'll answer that. You did a head count. We went to all the hospital tallies with the corrections officers here, the command structure. There were 3 inmates that were unaccounted for. Through the use of not only our deputies, we put out a BOLO alert, but the U.S. Marshal, one gentleman was a Hispanic male. They actually went to Santa Rosa and put eyes on this individual. So Mr. Pike is correct. Everyone is accounted for.
Now, we had a question about how many people were transported for treatment. 184 people. 184 people were taken to local hospitals for treatment, including inmates and correction office staff. There are 2 people remaining inmates in local hospitals, and we have 1 member of the correction staff that is still in the hospital. Everyone else has been treated and put back into custody or released to go home if they're a corrections officer. When asking questions, can we get you to identify who you are reporting for?
Bob Salarski, Channel 3. Just to go back to the fundamentals here, have we identified it as a gas explosion? Is it an accident? And is the ATF involvement an indication that there's an investigation into any foul play?
From everything that we've been told, we've actually gone through all of our 911 calls. We did not receive any calls about a gas leak before the explosion took place. The reason we have the investigation going on, which is being led by the State Fire Marshal's office, and I'll let them explain some of this if they'd like, is to determine why there was the explosion and what caused it. The ATF, from what I understand, and Chief, you may be able to clear this up, they're here as a supportive role to assist in any way, shape, or form. But as far as I know, sir, your office is the lead investigative office on that. Would you like to comment on any of that?
Yes, correct.
Obviously, we've received some of the same information that you have, and it would be logical that that is going to be a key element which we will be examining during the course of our investigation to determine whether or not there was in fact a gas leak or something that might have led to this. So that will obviously be
the origination physically in the building of where the explosion occurred.
That is part of what we're ongoing. We know it was in the rear portion of the structure. However, we have not been able to make a full access to it due to concerns that we currently have regarding the structure. As I said previously, this is going to be a slow and methodical process. There has been significant structural damage done to the building, and it is our intent that we do everything within our power to identify everything that we possibly can. However, we're going to do it in such a manner as to not risk any further injury to our personnel.
I'm sorry, so would you identify yourself for our audience one more time? I missed it as you stepped in the podium.
I am Joe Stedman, Joseph Stedman, Steadman, and I'm Chief of the Bureau of Fire and Arson Investigations for the State Fire Marshal's Office.
Is it your experience that flooding situations can sometimes lead to these natural gas explosions?
At this point in time, to get into hypothetical stuff like that would be irresponsible and would be conjecture. Until we've had an opportunity to examine the interior of the scene, I wouldn't want to speculate or give any information or hypothesis associated with that.
Sir, you said significant damage. Can you describe, when you say significant damage, what is that? Can you identify your Debbie Williams Military?
Yes, ma'am. There has been collapse of the floors, concrete floors between the basement and the upper floors, as well as there's been some damage which has occurred to structural support members inside of the building. At this point, we found no evidence of a fire following the initial incident.
When is the website expected to be operational for families to check on their loved ones?
Our public information staff is working right now. Most of our lists are written by hand, so we're transcribing that. We had 600 people housed here in this facility, so I know everyone wants to know, but we are working as diligent as we can to get that on myescambia.com so folks can go on there in a way that they can search for their loved one.
Bill, would you say that it's not only a website, isn't there a phone number set up for that as well?
We also have a number that has the list that we have. Area code 850-471-6600. So one more time, 850-471-6600.
The 3 people still in jail, or still in the hospital, how serious are their injuries?
We can't comment on that at this point. There are various HIPAA laws that we have to respect. We do know two inmates and 1 correctional officer still in
John Mount, Associated Press. We spoke with one inmate directly on the cell phone, confirmed that she was an inmate here. She said inmates were complaining of a gas smell. We also spoke with 2 other family members of separate inmates who said the same thing.
Like I said, we don't have any reports on record right now that show any smells of gas of any kind. What happened and how quickly there was some sort of leak is obviously there was something that caused this explosion. The timeline between when that happened and when the explosion happened has got to be determined by our investigation that's going to be going forward. So at this point, we can't comment on those claims.
Bill, Bob Solarski again. I don't know how far the station is as the crow flies, but at about 7 o'clock last night on the back porch, I noticed the gas smell. It dissipated quickly, and I wasn't too concerned, but that's a common smell in an event like we saw in the flooding. In the absence of ESP or another gas expert up here, is that an indication we're not worried about other gas leaks out there? Is there an active check out there right now to make sure there aren't events that could be gas related?
I cannot.
There's nervousness out there about natural gas right now. Is there reason to be?
I cannot speak on behalf of ESP, the gas provider for this community. I can tell you I did speak with a member of their staff today. They, like all public service folks today, have been very busy trying to address the issues that concern their infrastructure. I imagine they have concerns. We have concerns about roads still. So I would think that they probably as well, and they probably would encourage people who have concerns about a smell or an odor to call them. I don't have their number, but it is online and available for people to get a hold of them.
Melissa Gabriel, Associated Press. Can somebody just discuss exactly what? Did the floors collapse on each other? How many floors collapsed? What was the situation like right after the explosion?
Kathleen Castro, Public Information Manager for Escambia County. We cannot speculate on that. We have had search and rescue in the building. We have had some limited access from the State Fire Marshal's Office, but we just have not had the access to the building. We have not been able to determine that it's structurally sound for our staff or the state staff to go into it at this point. So we don't have the details for you. We'll take 2 more questions.
Callie Desmond from WER, real quick. People have been trying to call this hotline for hours and are not getting through at all. What do you have to say about that?
We have county staff who are operating this emergency hotline. They've been operating it all 24 hours a day since the event started. There are a lot of calls, there are a lot of concerns. Please keep trying. We will have it up on the website, myescambia.com, very, very shortly, and you can go there to look for your loved ones' names. We apologize to the community that it has taken us so long, but we wanted to be accurate and we wanted to be thorough in our research on this.
With that said, the emergency operations
I'm sorry,
center.
CNN?
We heard that there was significant flooding in here before this happened. Is it normal procedure not to evacuate this prison with flooding damage like that?
Gordon?
This is the second time this building has flooded. It was in our basement area. We don't have the inmates in the basement. That's where their kitchen and the laundry is in the basement. So we're running about 20 feet of water back there. Actually, we were here at the building yesterday dealing with the flooding situation. This happened last night, as you know. So this is the second time this building has flooded. In fact, we had just renovated it and it just was hoping to get it operational.
When you say 20 feet, 20 feet.
26 inches, Steve.
Okay, Rob Williams, News Radio 1620. Why is the state attorney here? The county attorney was here earlier. Are they looking into malfeasance or some other criminal activity?
No.
We can't comment to that right now, Rob.
Can the state attorney come up and comment?
The state attorney's here, yes. I don't know where they were.
Ms. Shannon's here. Let me be clear that from the Board of County Commissioners, we've heard the comments from this community, and I too am concerned. And that's why we're having an independent investigation by the state fire marshal. And then they will come with a conclusion. We're not going to be premature, but we're going to be fair and responsible to our citizens. And we want to give them their due diligence, an opportunity to go through and bring us back the findings. And when those findings are brought back, we're going to present those, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable for anything that we should be held accountable for, and we will hold other entities and other individuals accountable for anything they should be accountable for. But until we do the due diligence, it is unfair to prematurely make any accusations or any assumption that anything happened.
What about full activation of EOC? If you have such a demand for information and such concern out there, why not all hands on deck at the EOC for all these questions? Getting through to ECUA, ESP bill, very difficult. Why not have them all in a central area for these questions?
We have had everyone, all hands on deck throughout the event. There's just a limit to the number of people and phone calls you can handle. I can tell you outside of this particular event, during the storm that moved through, we had to tell people calling 911, you're going to have to hold. We've got higher priority calls to deal with first. So we're dealing with everything as quickly as we can logistically, Bob. I mean, our citizens information line is packed with people. They have been working around the clock, much like everyone else. And I can tell you from personal experience, those who've gotten through on my cell phone somehow, when they have questions about their loved one, it's not a quick phone call. People want answers. We understand that. And when you say, I don't have it for you, you need to call this particular number, they say, but why? So it takes some time for each one of those phone calls. When you have 600 some folks housed here, that's a lot of family and friends that want to know what happened.
But no full activation of EOC is what you said.
We were at a level 2 throughout this storm event, which has continued on throughout the entire event. Any other questions?
The state attorney walked up and he's here with a team of his prosecutors.
Mr. Edens,
County
would you like to
attorney was here
comment
earlier today. Mr. Edens.
Bill Edens, state attorney.
Well, it's my understanding that Mr. Atwater and the sheriff and the county representatives have answered most of the questions. As I understand it, the fire marshal's office, the chief financial officer, will be in charge of the investigation. It'll be the responsibility of my office to work with them on the investigation. I'll assign an experienced attorney to do that. As the chief financial officer, Jeff Atwater, said, the investigation will be methodical. It's obviously going to be very complicated. There is going to be an unbelievable number of witnesses, an unbelievable number of amount of forensic evidence to be evaluated. So I think the general public should know and understand that it will be a lengthy time before the questions have been answered exactly as to what happened in the jail. And just as an observation, obviously we all know this is a great tragedy on top of an unbelievable flood, and I've been very impressed with the work of all of the agencies, and most particularly cooperation between all of the agencies.
One more question for Mr. Pike. How long can you keep these hundreds of inmates in temporary quarters, Santa Rosa and the road crew facility and others, before you have to do something permanent? How long can you keep the situation as is?
That's the question I can't answer. Right now we do have all of them placed. We've been getting complete cooperation from Santa Rosa County. We have a request into the state for additional 100 beds, and I think that's going to be granted. We're looking to maybe move 100 over to Santa Rosa County. So with the cooperation of the different agencies, I think we'll be able to handle it without a problem.
We've got one statement more from Mike Weaver, Director of Public Safety, to kind of clear up some of the questions you had, Bob, about the staffing and level of our Emergency Operations Center during this event.
As many of you know, our Emergency Operations Center has been in activation since the flooding event while this event occurred. We have been at a level 2 since that time, which basically that is every emergency support function has been manned 24 hours a day since that flooding event occurred. While we're having so much other stuff, is our citizens' information. Every single phone line possible to be manned in there is being manned, but our personnel are being stretched between both a flooding event and this event, but every position is manned in the Emergency Operations Center.
On that note, safety of the water, a lot of people calling about discoloration, lack of pressure, status of how safe is the water?
I can't really speak to that since that is also something through ECUA. I know that they have been putting out some boil water notices when they're aware of any actual water line pieces that have been broken. If anybody is concerned about their water color, that same number, 471-6600, ECUA, is also in that same Emergency Operations Center.
I want to thank you guys for coming out. We've concluded our press conference here. Some of our folks...
We're done with the press conference. You can ask them individual questions.
Thank you for coming out here today. Everyone is accounted for, and we mourn the loss of the 2 who lost their lives in this event. Thank you.
You're good, you're good. Come on. As well. Significant structural damage that was completed 2 or 3 times.
Come on. Go off your shoulder, Tristan.
Also the state fire marshal order says at least a week to get everyone set up here.
You got a second?
Going state attorney Bill Edmonds said this is going to be a very complicated investigation. Lots of evidence, and he said that
Thanks, Dave. Of course. You just ignore me, all right?
Ford and Pike, the director of correctional from Escambia County, saying there's an awful lot of misinformation, and the chairman of the Escambia County Commission, Lena May, said that he wants transparency. The number one priority is getting everyone safe. But again, that's the final tally. Only 2 inmates dead. 2 inmates and 1 corrections officer remain in area hospital.
Oh, you're right. Typical, because there are probably more questions at this point, as there always are, than there are answers. Basically, the message from the group that you saw, you joined it in progress. You didn't miss much of the first couple of minutes. I've got David Morgan, the sheriff of Escambia County, standing by in just a second. But let me say, you didn't miss much of the first couple of minutes. I think what we're getting from this press conference this afternoon is that the situation is under control. Everybody's working, and we've got federal help coming, state help coming, extra beds coming to handle the situation, and then find out over the next 5 days, given Mr. Weaver's timetable, if you will, for better answers, to find out what actually happened behind me. That said, I've got Sheriff David Morgan, who no longer controls this facility. Was big news about a year and a half ago. Tell me, though, you're familiar with this. This building has flooded before. Yes. Give me a status situation out here. How are the corrections officers? I know you're not in charge, but you know them.
I do. All of them are pretty saddened right now, Bob, because the one correctional officer, is injured and still in the hospital. And anytime you have this situation, there's a lot of anxiety. This facility, as silly as it sounds, in all of this mix, these folks are also worried about having a job, because it'll be a significant amount of time before this facility is rebuilt. So they're going to...
How much? Significant meaning?
Oh, wow.
Before we have something
Well, they're going to have to come in probably, Bob. They'll do all the structural integrity work. They'll bring in engineers in, of course, and they'll check that. The best guesstimates right now, and again, this is speculative, is that the building's probably going to be a total loss. So they're probably going to have to tear this building down and build another one. And so, you're talking probably 8-10 months at the shortest time that you could erect a building like this. Most of them are more like 18 months to 2 years.
Now, I don't want to touch a sore nerve here. Of course, I don't mind on the other hand. But as you made that request for the additional $18 million in budgeting for the sheriff's office not so long ago, was improvements to this building and modernization of the facilities part of that plan?
It was overall hiring up correctional officers, bringing the building up to basic code that the DOJ had told us we'd have to meet, and also, of course, hiring the appropriate medical staff, especially psychiatric people. So, yeah, you crunch those numbers. I think those numbers were accurate then. They're accurate now. In the flooding in 2012, we had an A&E firm give us an estimate. We also identified a federal grant for almost $11 million, and we actually went to, that time, George Stewart and Commissioner Valentino, and said, look, we can get this federal grant money, doesn't require any matching funds, and let's fix this thing right. Let's get the holding pond over here in Basin, get it expanded, get its capacity large, put in sump pumps out back. Let's get the engineers in here and once and for all solve the flooding problem at the Escambia County Jail. And that, obviously, fell on deaf ears, and I think the process was then moving to take the jail back to the county, which is fine. But again, we got to stop band-aiding things, and that's what we've been doing here. Is we go out and build a retaining wall. Well, the retaining wall cannot handle, any amounts of water, and so it collapsed a couple of weeks ago when we didn't have that much rainfall. And then, of course, what it did this time was it actually held water in. So you had significant flooding back there. I don't know if you've been back there to get shots of the destruction of the building, but we can make that happen if you need to, Bob.
Okay. Give me the condition of, you got a force out there that has been working nonstop since, I'm assuming, the tornado advisories that went away, and, of course, every other problem arose. How's the condition of your force out there?
It's pretty good. We lost some vehicles in rescue attempts. We lost, I think, 4 or 5 out here in the parking lot. We literally ran out of high ground to take vehicles to. And then we were in rescue operations where we actually went out into the water and was getting people, and the vehicles drowned out and all that. So I think my last count was 28 vehicles. Not too bad, though.
28 vehicles total lost.
Yeah, for the sheriff's office. I can't speak for PPD and other people. But the rotation is good. We've got school resource officers that are integrated back into our force when school's not in session. Of course, school will be cranking up now. So we managed to do that with and hold our overtime problems down to a minimum. So we're looking pretty good. We can get some R&R in, and the weather's turning fine for the weekend. The one thing about Escambia County is complain about the weather, wait a couple of days, it'll change.
It rebounds quickly. The dangers that are out there, what are you hearing from the crews? I went through some, I hesitate to call them puddles, some small lakes. There are hazards out there. Tell the public who maybe have not ventured out of their homes just yet what to watch out for when they're out there, and is natural gas something they still should be concerned about, whether or not it caused this explosion?
Well, when we were over on Piedmont with the governor yesterday, we were walking, that entire street that just literally exploded, is what it looks like anyway, and we smelled gas, and the mayor got on the phone and called the folks to get out there and get the gas shut off, and there was a water main that was broken. But yeah, if you get an odor of rotten eggs, probably is the best way to describe it, get on the phone and call ECUA, and they'll get somebody out here, and the ESP folks are also involved in that, and they'll get someone out to check your gas lines, and they'll turn your gas off. And it is a real problem. Of course, the building here had gas. The washer and dryer system, the dryers were gas, and of course they had just reinstalled the new kitchen down there, which also was gas. And so you had the gas lines that went into the building.
How old are those gas lines?
Actually brand new. They were refitted from the old flood, and it was all new appliances, of course, that were put in there. On the roads, one of the ways we're saving manpower, Bob, is we do have barricades up in those areas where we believe the road is not structurally sound. We're working with, obviously, roads and bridges to do that. So for the citizens, if you come upon a barricade, do not drive around the barricade. Do not move the barricade and drive through. You may be crossing an area, a bridge, or a roadway that's going to collapse on you. We got sinkholes that have formed in some areas. All you have to do is get out to scenic highway and see what happened out there. Some huge areas just, again, have collapsed, and that's what happens with that amount of water that we had. So, be very, very careful. If you smell gas, report it. If you got a roadblock somewhere, don't expect a deputy to be standing everywhere. We don't have that many officers. But please obey that roadblock.
Okay. Finally, nobody gets information fast enough when a tragedy occurs. No, you weren't responsible for here last night. Based on your assessment of the situation, did the information get out to the people affected by this explosion quickly enough?
I think in that chaotic situation, probably, Bob, in that, chaos occurs when there's completely unexpected incident occurs and something that you've never trained for. And we don't train for explosions on the correctional side. You respond to incidents and accidents. And so what occurred here was pretty much off the cuff. And of course, once our folks got the call, we came up and set up the perimeter. We were concerned about escapes, obviously, and the correctional folks were working the inside. They got their command bus down here. So for a chaotic situation, it probably went as well as could be expected.
All right, Sheriff David Morgan, thank you, appreciate it. And we'll be hearing a lot more from him in the days to come. Bob Solarski reporting live here in Pensacola, just outside the jail where that explosion last night killed 2 people. We've got 3 more people still in the hospital of unknown condition right now because that's protected information right now. Everybody else has pretty much been treated and released. Still a lot of concern in this community about information. We didn't get a whole lot in the press conference we just saw, but more or less an assurance that we've got federal, state, and other help on the way to help answer the questions that everybody has right now, including what caused this behind me. We've got all those questions and whatever answers we can find for you coming up on Channel 3 News 4, 5, 6, of course, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. We'll be manning the base here, and we'll see you at 4 o'clock. Now back to regular programming. Nice hustle.
How the hell you been?
Nobody told me we were going.
I've been tired.